message came in at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, and I almost didn't read it. I was already in bed, half asleep, still in my scrubs from a 12-hour shift at the hospital. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I reached for it out of habit, the way you do when you've been on call long enough that your body just responds automatically to any notification. It was from my cousin Britt. We weren't close. She was the type to only text on birthdays, and even then, it was just a GIF. So when I saw her name, I sat up. The message said, "Thinking of you today, Meg. I know the anniversary is always hard. Your parents raised such a beautiful daughter. She would have been so proud of everything you've done. Rest in peace, sweetheart." I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. I set my phone face down on the nightstand, picked it back up, and read it one more time, because I needed to be absolutely sure I wasn't misreading something, that I wasn't still half asleep and dreaming. My name is Megan. I'm 31 years old. I'm a registered nurse at a Level 1 trauma center in Portland, Oregon. I pay my own rent. I file my own taxes. I have a 2019 Honda Civic with a cracked bumper that I keep meaning to get fixed. And according to my cousin Britt, and apparently my parents, I have been dead for 5 years. I didn't call Britt back that night. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too badly to dial, and I wasn't sure what I would even say. "Hey, funny story. I'm actually alive?" I just sat there in the dark of my apartment. In Portland, in the city my parents have never once visited in the 5 years I've lived here, and I stared at the ceiling and tried to breathe. Let me back up, because the story doesn't make sense without the context. And trust me, even with the context, it barely makes sense. I grew up in Harlan, Nebraska. Small town, about 8,000 people, the kind of place where everybody knows what you had for breakfast and your mother's opinion of your breakfast. My parents, my father a retired high school principal, my mother the kind of woman who ran every church committee and school fundraiser simultaneously, were respected in that town in the specific way that people are respected when they've made themselves indispensable and slightly intimidating. I was their youngest child by 6 years. My brother Lucas was the golden one. Football, the bait team, never caused a problem, married his high school girlfriend at 22, and settled 2 streets over from my parents. I was the difficult one. Not in the sense that I was actually difficult, but in the sense that I wanted things they didn't understand and couldn't control. I wanted to leave Harlan. I wanted to go to nursing school in the city. I wanted to travel. I wanted a life that didn't center around my mother's approval and my father's silence. When I was 23, my maternal grandfather passed away. He'd been sick for a long time, Parkinson's, slow and brutal, and his death was not a surprise. What was a surprise, at least to me, was the will. My grandfather had left a specific bequest, equal shares of his investment portfolio, to be divided between his 2 grandchildren. That was me and Lucas. The estate was worth about $340,000 at the time, split evenly, which meant my share was roughly $170,000. I found this out not from my parents, but from my grandfather's attorney, a woman named Ms. Holloway, who tracked me down through my nursing school's alumni directory because, as she put it, my parents had informed her that I was unreachable and that all correspondence should go through them as my representatives. I was not unreachable. I had the same phone number I'd had since I was 17. When I called my mother about it, she told me the money was being held in trust until I was more settled. When I asked what that meant, she told me I was being ungrateful. When I pressed harder, my father got on the phone and told me I needed to think about what kind of person I wanted to be, and then he hung up. That was the beginning of the end of my relationship with my family. Over the next year, every conversation became a negotiation. Every visit home turned into an argument. My mother wanted to know why I wasn't moving back. My father wanted to know when I was going to settle down. Neither of them ever mentioned the inheritance again. I consulted a legal aid attorney who told me that if I was named in the will and had not received the funds, I could pursue it, but that it would be expensive, complicated, and would almost certainly destroy what was left of my family relationships. I was 24. I didn't have the money or the energy to fight them. So I made a choice that I've turned over in my mind 1,000 times since. I let it go. I told myself the relationship wasn't worth the money. I moved to Portland, took a job at the hospital, and slowly, painfully, let my family fade to the edges of my life. My parents and I exchanged texts a few times a year. terse, careful things. Merry Christmas. Hope you're well. Drive safe. I didn't go home for holidays. They didn't ask me to. Lucas and I had stopped speaking entirely. He'd made it clear in one particularly ugly phone call that he thought I was being selfish, that I was breaking our mother's heart, that I should just drop the whole thing and come home. I dropped it. I came home in my heart and in my memory, to the person I'd been before all of it. And then I moved forward. That's the world I'd built for myself. A quiet, stable, self-sufficient world. My co-workers, a few close friends, my cat, my cracked bumper. It wasn't a big life, but it was mine. An Enbrit's text arrived and blew a hole straight through the middle of it. I called in sick to work the next morning. I never call in sick. I've worked through strep throat and a sprained ankle and one spectacularly bad flu that I still don't like to think about. But that morning I just couldn't do it. I couldn't walk onto a floor and take vitals and smile at patients while my entire sense of reality was quietly dismantling itself. I spent the morning doing what any self-respecting millennial does in a crisis. I went online. It took me less than 20 minutes to find the memorial page. It was on one of those cemetery tribute sites, the ones where families can set up a remembrance profile for someone who's passed. There is a photo of me. It was from my college graduation. One I recognized immediately because I'm holding my diploma and squinting into the sun, and my mother is standing next to me with the specific smile she used for photographs. Someone had cropped her out. The profile listed my name, my birth date, and a death date exactly 5 years and 3 months prior. Cause of death, car accident. There was a guest book. My mother had signed it. My father had signed it. Lucas had left a message that said, "She was my little sister, and I'll carry her with me every day." There were entries from people I'd gone to high school with, from members of my parents' church, from my mother's friends and her book club, from my aunt on my father's side who I hadn't spoken to in years, but who had apparently attended a memorial service because she referenced the beautiful service at Grace Lutheran and the lovely flowers. There had been a memorial service. For me, while I was alive and working night shifts and eating cereal out of the box at 2 in the morning, I sat with that for a long time. Here's what I know about grief. I've worked with it professionally. I've held the hands of people whose worlds have just been broken open. I know what it looks like, sounds like, how it moves through a room. And here's what I can tell you. What I felt sitting at my kitchen table looking at that memorial page was something grief adjacent, but not grief exactly. It was more like vertigo. Like the floor had shifted 6 inches, and I was trying to remember how to stand. Because here's the thing I kept circling back to. The death date. 5 years and 3 months ago, I was 25. I was finishing my first year in Portland. I was broke and tired and still bruised from everything that had happened with my family. And 5 years and 3 months ago was also, almost exactly, the date that my grandfather's estate would have legally closed. The point at which, if a named beneficiary had not come forward to claim their inheritance, the funds would be redistributed. I'm a nurse, not a lawyer, but I understood enough to know what I was looking at. I called Ms. Holloway. She had retired, but I found her through the Bar Association's directory and left a message with her forwarding contact. She called me back within 2 hours, and the conversation we had was one of the strangest of my life. This careful, precise woman on the other end of the line, going very quiet when I told her my name, and then saying, "Slowly, Miss Megan, you are aware that your parents filed a death certificate with this office 5 years ago. I was not aware of that. A falsified death certificate, filed with the probate attorney, which had allowed the estate to close. Which had allowed my share, $170,000, plus 5 years of investment returns that had pushed it closer to $210,000 to be redistributed. To my parents and my brother, Ms. Holloway gave me the name of a probate litigation attorney she trusted. She also, very quietly, said, "I'm glad you called. I never felt right about it." I spent the next 2 weeks on the phone with attorneys and making copies of everything I could find, my own identification, my employment records, my tax filings, 5 years of pay stubs and lease agreements and utility bills, every piece of paper that said I was here, I was alive, I was real. Because what my family had done was not just a betrayal. It was federal fraud. Filing a false death certificate, submitting fraudulent probate documents, obtaining funds through deception, these are federal crimes. I want to be clear about something because I think it matters. I didn't decide to pursue this out of anger. Or not only out of anger. I decided to pursue it because $210,000 was stolen from me. Because someone looked at my future and decided it belonged to them. Because the same people who signed my memorial guest book, who stood in Grace Lutheran and accepted condolences for a daughter and sister who was eating cereal in Portland and watching The Office on her laptop, needed to understand that what they had done was not a family disagreement. It was a crime. But there was something else I needed to do first. My parents' annual 4th of July barbecue had been a Harland institution for as long as I could remember. My mother had hosted it every year for 30 years in the backyard of the house I'd grown up in. It was the event she planned for months in advance, the one where she was most herself, the gracious hostess, the community pillar, the woman everyone loved. I found out it was happening through Britt's Instagram. She'd posted a "see everyone soon" story with a little firework emoji 2 days after she sent me that text. A text she'd never gotten a response to, because I still hadn't figured out what to say to her. I bought a plane ticket that same afternoon. I want to tell you I had a clear plan. I didn't. I had a flight, a rental car reservation, and a general sense that I needed to look my parents in the eyes before any of the legal process moved forward. I needed them to know I was coming. Not because I wanted to give them warning. I didn't. But because I needed to do this for myself, in person, as the person I actually was, alive, employed, documented, and done being quiet. I told 2 people I was going, my attorney and my friend Carla, who is a former Marine and currently the most practical human being I've ever met. Carla wanted to come with me. I told her no, but I'd promised I'd text her every hour. The flight from Portland to Omaha was 2 hours. The drive from Omaha to Harland was another hour and 45 minutes through flat, endless Nebraska, the landscape so familiar I felt it in my chest like a bruise. I'd done this drive so many times. I used to look forward to it, the way the sky opened up when you got out of the city, the specific shade of green the cornfields went in June. I stopped at a gas station 40 minutes outside of Harland and sat in the parking lot for a while. Texted Carla. She responded immediately. "You got this. You're the one who's been alive this whole time. Walk in like it." I walked in like it. The barbecue started at 2 in the afternoon. I pulled up at 3:15 when I knew the yard would be full, when people would already have plates of food and drinks in their hands and nowhere easy to go. I'd timed it deliberately. I wasn't going to do this in private, where my parents could control the narrative the way they'd controlled everything else. I was going to do this in front of witnesses. My mother's backyard looked exactly the same as I remembered it, string lights she put up every summer. The same white folding tables with the same red-checked tablecloths. The big oak tree with the tire swing that nobody used anymore, but that she refused to take down. About 40 people scattered across the lawn, kids running through the sprinkler, someone's dog stealing a hot dog bun off an unguarded plate. I came through the side gate. I don't know exactly who saw me first. I remember the sound, the way conversation stopped in sequence, like a ripple moving outward from wherever people's eyes had landed. I remember a woman near the gate dropping her plastic cup. I remember someone saying my name and then saying it again, louder, and the way it sounded wrong and right at the same time, like hearing a song you haven't heard in years played suddenly in a public place. My mother was standing by the back porch, talking to 2 women from her book club. She had a glass of lemonade in her hand. She turned at the sound of her name, because someone near me had started saying Mrs. Calloway in a strange, strangled voice, and she looked at me across the yard, and the lemonade hit the flagstone before she did. Not the glass. She kept hold of the glass. But the lemonade sloshed out, all of it, and she grabbed the porch railing with her free hand, and I watched the color leave her face the way it leaves a patient's face in a certain kind of medical emergency, all at once, sudden and total. My father was at the grill. He turned at the sound, saw me, and went completely still. Still the way a person goes still when their brain is trying to process something it doesn't have a category for. My brother was sitting at a picnic table with his wife and 2 kids. When he saw me, he stood up so fast he knocked his knee on the table edge and didn't seem to feel it. I walked toward my mother because she was the one I needed to start with. The yard had gone very quiet. 40 people watching, and the only sounds were the sprinkler and a kid asking her mom why everybody stopped talking. "Hi, Mom," I said. She stared at me. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. "I got a text," I said. "From Britain. She wanted me to know she was thinking of me on the anniversary." Still nothing. "I went online," I said. "I found the memorial page. I read the guest book." I paused. "I read the entry you wrote." My father had crossed the yard. He was standing behind my mother now, one hand on her shoulder, and he was looking at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger, not the cold disappointment I'd grown up afraid of, but something that looked, honestly, like fear. "Megan," he said, "this isn't the place. You filed a death certificate," I said, "with Grandpa's estate attorney, 5 years ago." The silence in that yard was the loudest thing I've ever experienced. "You filed a false death certificate," I said, and I made sure my voice was level. Because I'd practiced this, I'd said it to myself in the mirror of my Portland apartment at 6 in the morning while my cat watched me from the bathroom counter, so that my share of Grandpa's inheritance would be redistributed. $210,000 with returns. That's what my life was worth to you. My mother made a sound. It wasn't words. It was something smaller than words. My brother said my name from somewhere behind me. I didn't turn around. "I'm not here to make a scene," I said, which was somewhat ironic given everything. "And I'm not here to give you a chance to explain. There's no explanation. I'm here because I needed you to see me. I needed everyone here to see me. I needed Britt to stop sending me anniversary texts." I heard someone crying quietly. I thought it was my aunt. I didn't look. "My attorney has already filed the paperwork," I said. "You'll be hearing from her." I turned around and walked back through the side gate the same way I came in. My hands were shaking so badly I had trouble with the latch. I got it on the 3rd try. Carla's text was already on my phone. "How'd it go?" I sat in the rental car in front of my parents' house and typed back, "I think Mom spilled her lemonade." Carla sent back 17 laughing emojis and then, "Get in the car. Drive. Call me from the road." I got in the car. I drove. I want to address something because people always ask about it, the Social Security piece. When my parents filed the false death certificate, it was submitted to the probate court, not to the Social Security Administration. The document they filed was fraudulent, but it was targeted specifically at the estate proceeding. My SSN was never flagged as deceased in the federal system because they didn't file with SSA. They were careful. They filed just enough to close the estate, not so much that it would create problems they couldn't manage. The other thing people ask about, why did I wait so long? And the honest answer is that I didn't know there was anything to wait for. I didn't know they'd done any of this. I thought I'd been cut out of the inheritance the normal way. Parental pressure, legal maneuvering, the quiet theft of the kind that happens in families all the time and never gets named. I didn't know about the death certificate. I didn't know about the memorial service. I didn't know I was dead. I knew when Britt texted me, and then I moved. The legal process took 14 months and was, I'll be honest, brutal in its own specific way. Not dramatic like the barbecue, but relentless. Depositions, document requests. A forensic accountant my attorney hired who traced every dollar of that redistribution. My parents hired their own attorneys. My brother, in the early stages, tried to claim he hadn't known about the false death certificate, a claim that fell apart fairly quickly when his email correspondence with my parents from 5 years prior was subpoenaed. He'd known. The case settled before it went to trial. My parents and my brother agreed, collectively, to repay the full $200,000 plus legal fees and a civil penalty. No criminal charges were filed. My attorney and I made that call together, and I've thought about it a lot since. There are days I think we should have pushed for criminal prosecution. There are days I think the settlement was the right thing for my own sanity. I don't know that I'll ever be fully at peace with that decision, but it's the one I made. I also asked them to take down the memorial page. They did, within 48 hours of the settlement. I checked after it came down, and then I closed that browser tab and didn't open it again. Britain, to her credit, handled it remarkably well when I finally called her. She cried. She apologized. She said she'd felt something was wrong, but hadn't known what to ask or who to ask or whether it was her place. I told her it wasn't her fault, and I meant it. She was one of many people my parents had deceived, and she'd reached out in good faith on an anniversary she'd been told mattered. "I thought you were gone," she kept saying. "I really thought you were gone." "I wasn't," I said. "I was just in Portland." She laughed a little at that, through the crying, and I did too. I still get birthday texts from her now. Real ones, not anniversary of death ones. She sends actual gifts, which honestly is a step up. I've thought a lot about what I want people to take from this, and I'm going to try to say it simply. If your name is in a legal document, a will, a trust, any estate proceeding, make sure someone is representing your interest. Not your parents on your behalf. Not a family member who assures you it's being handled. You. Directly. The probate courts are public record. Estate closings are documented. If you are named in a will and that estate has closed without your involvement, you can look into it. An estate attorney can request records. It's not always expensive to at least ask the question. And if your family has told you that your inheritance is being held in trust until you're more settled, find out what that actually means, in writing, with documentation. Because sometimes it means exactly what they're telling you, and sometimes it means something else entirely. The $210,000 is in a high-yield savings account and a modest index fund portfolio. My attorney helped me set it up. I bought myself a reliable car, not a Honda Civic with a cracked bumper, though I did love that car. And I took 2 weeks off work for the first time in my professional life and flew to Iceland because I'd wanted to go since I was 17, and there was never a reason not to go anymore. I stood at the edge of a geothermal pool, in a country where no one knew me or my family or the story, and the sky was doing something impossible with the light, and I thought, I've been alive this whole time. I just had to prove it to the right people. That felt like enough. That still feels like enough. I've been asked, more times than I can count, whether I regret going to that barbecue. Whether I think it would have been smarter, cleaner, to just let the attorneys handle it and never show my face in Harland again. And every time I come back to the same answer, no. Not for a second. Here's what I've learned about the way consequences actually work. Not the version we're told as kids, where bad things happen to bad people quickly and visibly and in proportion to what they've done. The real version is slower and stranger than that. My parents made a calculation 5 years ago. They looked at me, at my life, my future, my share of something my grandfather had spent decades building, and they decided it was available to them. That I was available to them. That I could be erased from a legal document and a family record and eventually from memory, and that no one would push back hard enough to matter. That calculation was wrong. Not because the universe corrected it automatically, but because I did. That's the part I want to sit with, because I think it's the part that actually matters. My mother dropping that lemonade, that moment happened because I made a series of decisions. I called Ms. Holloway back. I found an attorney. I gathered 5 years of pay stubs and lease agreements and proof that I had been alive and present and real, even when my own family had decided otherwise. The confrontation at that barbecue didn't come from luck or fate or anything outside myself. It came from me choosing, deliberately and repeatedly, to treat what had happened to me as something worth fighting about. I wasn't always sure I believed I was worth that. That's the part I don't say out loud very often. 5 years of being quietly erased by the people who raised you does something to how you see yourself. There were months in Portland where I genuinely wondered whether it was worth the fight, whether I should just let it go, the way I'd let so many other things go with my family. Whether asking for what I was owed made me difficult, demanding, the version of myself they'd always accused me of being. What I know now is that the willingness to understand your own situation clearly, to look at a falsified death certificate and call it what it is, to read a probate record and understand what it means, to find the right people and ask the right questions, that clarity is not cold or calculating. It's necessary. It's how you protect yourself when the people who were supposed to protect you decided not to. And then there's the part that took me longer to learn, knowing something isn't enough. You have to act on it. I knew my family had taken something from me for years before I had the documentation to prove it. What changed wasn't my circumstances. It was my decision to stop waiting for the right moment and simply move, buy the ticket, walk through the gate. Let your hand shake and do it anyway. Britt texted me last month. She's coming to Portland in the fall and wants to get lunch. I said yes immediately. Because she's part of what comes after. The part where I get to decide who stays in my life and on what terms. Not my parents' terms. Not the version of me they buried in a tribute page on some cemetery website. My terms. I stood at the edge of a geothermal pool in Iceland and thought, I've been alive this whole time. The question was never whether I deserved to be. The question was whether I was willing to prove it, to the court, to my family, and finally to myself. I was. And that made all the difference.